Hello everyone, my name is Miss Ashley from Fibo Kids Art Academy and welcome to another amazing art class. For our project today, we're going to be learning about James Audubon, who is famous for drawing illustrations of birds. So because he is known for drawing those birds, we're going to be drawing birds as well. But before we get started with our project, we're going to read a short story about him. So let's go ahead and get started. As a boy, James liked to watch birds more than anything else. He liked to go on long walks with his father in France. They would look at the birds flying with all their beautiful colors. They would think about how they came each spring, then disappeared, only to return the next year. It was spring in April. James went on a walk in search of birds. He found an empty nest, but then two birds, a mom and a dad, flew out of the cave. They dipped and soared near the creek. James wondered, are these the same birds who built the nest last year? Where do they spend the winter? Will they return next spring? James was so excited. He ran back to the farmhouse. He shouted to the housekeeper, "Birds! Birds!" She told him to take off his muddy shoes. She liked James, but she was worried that all he did was think about and talk about birds. She hoped he would start to help with the farm and do less chasing after the birds. James hurried up to his room. He called it his museum. He filled it with everything he found, like nests, eggs, tree branches, pebbles, feathers, and stuffed birds. His walls were covered in his drawings of birds. James wondered, where do small birds go in the winter? Do the same birds come back to the same nests each spring? He took books down from his shelf. Old scientists did not agree. Aristotle wrote that small birds slept underwater or in hollow logs all winter. Other scientists believe the birds gathered in groups like a ball underwater, frozen-like. James had never seen such a thing. James decided he wanted to watch the birds and find out the answers to his questions himself. He went out into the woods every day and watched them. He made drawings and took notes of everything he saw. James came up with a plan. The next day, while the mom and dad bird were gone from their nest, he picked up one of the baby birds and put a band or string on its foot. This had never been done before, but John had read that medieval kings did this with their falcons, so they could be returned. But the bird pecked off the string. James tried again, and the next day and the next day. It wasn't working. So he tied a piece of fine silver, and a week later, the birds were gone. All winter, James worked in his room, the museum, and painted all the sketches he had made of the birds. Every day he would walk outside where the birds once had been, and he would ask himself, where do small birds go? Do they return to the same nest in the spring? It was now spring. One morning, James heard a bird call. He ran to the cave. He looked inside. He saw the mom and dad bird, but where were the babies from last year? Had they returned? He looked everywhere for them. James looked out in the meadow, and in a hay shed, he saw two birds building a nest. One wore a silver thread around its leg. James shouted, "It's him! Yes, the same birds returned to the same nest, and their children nested nearby." He decided that he would spend the rest of his life telling the world what he had learned about birds through pictures and words, and he did. So again, guys, James Audubon became so famous for drawing not just pictures of birds, but life-size images of birds. So for example, if you were to see a flamingo, he would draw that in life-size. So we're going to be drawing our mom bird with two baby birds today, and you'll have the option of attaching a string to one of those baby birds like Audubon did in real life. So let's go ahead. We're going to put my sample aside and get started with our practice draw. Make sure you're using that pencil, but I'll be using a Sharpie so you can see my lines. And make sure that your paper is vertical, which means up and down. And we're going to draw two circles next to each other. These are going to be our baby birds' heads. So there's one circle and another circle. All right, now because these are our baby birds' heads, we need to draw those beaks by drawing one triangle and another triangle, another triangle, and another triangle. And then we'll draw the eyes. Now you can draw those eyes however you would like. I like to draw an oval with a small circle so that way I can fill it in later. Or you can draw those eyes closed or open. That's up to you. Remember, you are using a pencil. I'm just filling in the area so you know what area to fill in later. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw a curve that connects to the head. We're going to do this again for the other baby bird. And then we need to draw a curved line that connects. Now, birds wouldn't be birds without wings, so we're going to draw a curved line on the left and a curved line on the right. And we're going to draw a lot of skinny ovals. These are going to be our bird's toes. Remember, ovals are like really squished circles. So I drew 6 on this side, and I'm going to draw 6 more on the right side. And these are so small because they are baby birds. In between those heads, I'm going to add a curved line because this is going to be the back of the nest. And I'm going to continue this line off the page on the left and the right. And then I'm going to curve all the way down to the bottom of my paper on the left and the right side. So there we have our baby birds, but right now their mom is missing, so we do need to bring our mom into the picture for our final draw. If you're still a little bit confused about this drawing, maybe you're still working on those toes, you can always go ahead and press pause on the video. But I am now going to be moving on to our final draw. And I want you to make sure that you're still using that pencil, but I'll be using a Sharpie still so you can see my lines. Make sure that your paper is vertical, which means up and down. And we'll go ahead and draw those 2 circles for the baby bird's heads. Try your best to make sure that they're the same size and they're right next to each other. So it's like a number 8 on its side. All right, let's draw those 4 triangles, 2 for each bird. 1, 2, so it's like we're drawing upside down V's. 3, 4. And then we can draw those eyes by drawing ovals and a small circle inside. All right, I'm going to draw that curve going up, down, up, and down. Because we do need to connect those lines. And then I'll draw those wings by drawing a curve and curve. And then we'll draw those teeny tiny toes by drawing 6 ovals under each bird. So there's 6 right here, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Great job on drawing those baby birds. If you do need to go back and redraw them, you can go ahead and do so. I am going to draw a line right here to connect them. That's going to be the back of the nest. And I'm going to draw a curved line on the left and a curve on the right. And then bring this curved line down on both sides. Great job. So we're back to where we were for our practice draw. Now we need to go ahead and draw the mom bird. So above our baby birds, we need to draw a pretty big circle. This circle's pretty big that I can almost fit my entire fist in that circle. So make sure that you draw that circle pretty big. We're going to go to the middle left of the circle and draw a curved line going up, and same on the right side. Then where the head meets the body, I'm going to draw a curve going to the corner of our paper and a curved line going to the corner of our paper. Great job. Let's do some face details first, but first let's start with that beak. We'll come back to that beak in just a little bit because I do want to add one more thing to our picture. But let's first go ahead and draw those eyes by drawing two ovals with two circles at the bottom, one in each eye. Then we're going to go here and we're going to draw a curve, rainbow, and rainbow on each side. These are going to be the feathers for birds' wings. And we'll do that again. Curve and curve, curve and curve. All right, now I want you to think about what could your mom bird be bringing for her little babies. Maybe your bird brought them a flower to kind of just smell, or maybe she brought them a worm to eat. That's up to you what your bird brought for her baby birds. I'm going to draw a worm. I'm drawing a letter C. Curve up and up, and then curve for that head. But again, your bird can be maybe bringing a beetle or a ladybug or a butterfly or maybe just a flower or maybe some string because she picked it off of her leg. That is totally up to you what you're going to draw right there for the creativity. But one last thing, when you are finished drawing that creativity, don't forget to draw those clouds by drawing a curve. And you can draw these clouds as big as you'd like or as small. But that is it for our picture. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my Sharpie aside, but you guys are using a pencil, so go ahead and put that pencil aside because when you are done, your picture should look something like this. This is mine drawn in pencil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my Sharpie because I no longer need my pencil. And I am going to outline all of my pencil lines. So I'm just going to take my time, making sure that that cap is on the back. And I'm going to outline those eyes and fill in the circle parts. Alright. Look at that worm. So I'm going to draw the mom bird first, and then I'll work on those baby birds. All right, I'm still outlining. All right, I'm going to outline my clouds as well. And then I will now work on those baby birds. Don't forget to fill in those small parts of the eyes. Don't forget, you're also going to outline those toes and fill them in. All right, I just need to finish the nest now. All right, check to make sure that you didn't miss any of those pencil lines. I'm gonna go ahead and put my Sharpie aside and take out my eraser and erase any of those pencil lines that I may see on my paper. So I have quite a few in those birds' wings. All right, so there is my picture completely outlined. If you're still outlining your picture with your Sharpie, no worries, just take your time with that. You can always press pause on the video. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take out my Mr. Sketch markers. Now with my Mr. Sketch markers, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to be coloring my big bird. Now birds come in all sorts of different colors, so you can choose any colors you want. I do recommend not using black though, since we did outline our bird with a black Sharpie. So I'm just gonna go through my colors and I'm gonna be choosing brown for my mom bird. Now, if you wanted to, you could maybe have her have a brown body with red wings. That is up to you, but I'm just going to be using brown for her entire body. And I make sure that my cap is on the back, I outline, and then I fill it in. Outline and fill that in. I use those long strokes top to bottom. All right, so now that I'm done with those wings, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the body. And I'm using those long strokes still, top to bottom. And then I will fill in the head. Now, I'm not going to fill in the beak because I'm actually going to be using orange for that. All right. There is our mom bird. All right, for those bird beaks, you can use either yellow or orange. I'm going to be using orange for mine, but again, you can use either orange or yellow. So I'm just going to take my orange, outline the beak, and fill it in. I'm going to do the same thing for the beaks down here. Now they could be different colored beaks for the baby birds if you'd like. However, I am going to be using yellow for my baby birds, so that's why I'm not using yellow for the beaks. Now I'm going to be using yellow for my baby birds. If you wanted to have a different color, maybe if you wanted a red baby bird or a a blue one. That's up to you, but normally since they are the same breed of birds, they would normally be the same color. So I'm just taking my time to fill in the bodies of those little baby birds. All right, I'm just about done. Remember, using those long strokes top to bottom really does help to fill it in. All right, the last thing we need to do is we need to fill in that creativity. Now I have a worm, and worms are usually pink or brown or green, so it's up to you, but I'm gonna be doing a pink worm today. You can choose whatever color you want, or maybe if you have a butterfly or a flower, you can choose any color you would like. So I just filled in that baby worm. All right, and that was our last step with our Mr. Sketch markers or whatever markers you did use. If you're still filling in, whether you're filling in the mom or the baby birds, go ahead and press pause on the video. I am going to put my markers aside though, and I am going to be taking out my oil pastels next. All right, we want to add some shading and highlights to our bird. So let's go ahead and get started with the mom bird first. I'm going to be using brown because it's a dark enough color. However, whatever color you did use for your bird, whether you use red or yellow or orange, make sure you're using a darker color. So for example, you could use red with red or purple, or if you do have a big yellow bird, you can use orange. What we're going to do is I'm going to take my dark color and I'm just going to outline the top over the head. And then I'm going to go along the curve on the left and the right side. Then I'm just going to go over the tops of those wings. So that way they just look like they're protruding more and they start to look more like feathers. All right, I'm just going to touch up a little bit on that one. Because now I'm going to grab my tan or my yellow, a lighter color, you can even use white, and I'm just going to go over the feathers here. That way it just looks like it's got that nice highlight. Our bird has different colors. Make sure you are using a lighter color though. Please don't use a darker color. And there we go. Now our baby birds also need some of those feathers. So I'm going to actually be taking my regular brown right here, but you can use maybe a blue if you've got some blue birds or any sort of different color. What I'm going to first do is I'm going to add some little U-shaped curves on those wings. So go ahead and add those U-shaped curves on the wings. Because we do need to add some shading like we did with the mom's head, so make sure you're taking a darker color. So this tan is perfect with that yellow. I'm going to take my tan and I'm just going to go along the left side here, the right side here, and underneath the wing here and here. We'll go underneath the head just a little bit too. All right, we're going to be using a lot of browns and tans today. So let's take our darkest brown in our box. What we're going to do is we're going to run that brown along the side right here. We want it to be pretty thick too. Awesome. Try to get as close as you can to that line. So if you need to use short, hard strokes to fill it in, you can go ahead and do that. Because now we're going to start building our nest. What we need to do is we need to draw some slanted lines coming out along here with that same brown color. If you want, you can add even more. And then you're going to take your brown again. This time you're going to have it on the side and you're going to pinch and pull on your nest. And don't forget that small little area between your birds there, but pinch and pull. All right. I made sure to get every spot possible because now we're going to take our tan and we're going to add more slanted lines. Make sure you're using, holding like a crayon, adding those slanted lines. And there we have our nest. All right. One last thing, we do need to make sure to color our clouds because we will be using watercolor for that background. And we also do need to add a little bit of details on our creativity. So first with our gray, let's add some shading underneath those clouds. Then we're going to take our white and we're going to use short, hard strokes to fill in those clouds. And you want to make sure that you take that white on top of the gray because it starts to blend right there. And because oil pastel and watercolor don't mix, that way when we use our watercolors, the watercolor won't mix with that oil pastel and our clouds will stay white. So I'm using those short, hard strokes, making sure to blend on top of the gray. All right, I'm going to add just a few details onto my worm. My worm's very simple. I'm just going to add some lines. But if you have any more details to add, maybe you want to add some strands or details on those petals for your flower, your leaf, or maybe you want to add some spots to your bug, go ahead and do that. Just make sure to add a little bit of details because that was our final step with our oil pastels. So I'm going to go ahead and put those oil pastels away and take out my watercolors. Now for that background, you can do any shade of blue, purple, or you could even do orange or red, like a sunset. I used blue for my previous example right here. So I'm going to be sticking with my blue today. My turquoise blue actually. But again, you can do a realistic sky color. So I'm just going to take some water, just trying to use as much of this turquoise blue as I can. And I'm just going to paint my background. Now make sure, be extra careful as you are painting. You don't want to get any of that watercolor on your birds because watercolor does make the markers bleed if you're not too careful. So make sure you paint very carefully around your birds. But if you do get some of that watercolor on your clouds, that's okay because oil pastel and watercolor do not mix. Now, if you need to switch to a smaller brush, I highly recommend doing so. If you don't have a smaller brush, that's okay. I'm just going to take that small brush and get as close as I can. And I like using that smaller brush, but if you don't have a small brush, that's okay. You can just try your best to use that bigger brush. We're just getting as close as we can to those baby birds. And the worm and the mom's beak. And don't forget that small little space between the two baby birds. Let me just go around the baby birds first. And then I'll get that small area right there. All right, now that I got that small area out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and move back to my big brush and paint my sky some more. All right. Make sure as you are painting, you are spreading those puddles around. If you have puddles on your paper, it could make it tear. You want to make sure that your colors are nice and even too. So if you do need to go back to any of those areas to touch up on, make sure that they are a little bit darker or brighter, you can certainly do that. Just make sure you are spreading that paint around. You can really try your best to paint around those clouds. And if you do get any paint on those clouds, it's okay. But really spread that blue or orange if you've got a sunset, or purple because maybe it's nighttime and your baby birds are having a midnight snack. All right, there is our sky. Last thing we need to do is we need to take our brown and we're gonna paint our nest. And just like we did with that sky, make sure you get that small area right here by using just the tip of your brush. It goes right there. Just very carefully paint that area. You can use brown or yellow orange. That's up to you. I'm going to use brown today though. Let's see how the yellow orange does look though. Yellow orange actually looks really nice too. You can use a mixture of both of them if you'd like to. That is up to you. You can even use both by putting yellow orange down and then brown on top. Just make sure you are using either brown or yellow orange. All right, spread that paint around, make sure there's no puddles. You should be able to see that nice texture and the branches from the nest. Now, when your picture is completely dry, what you're going to do, this is an optional step, you can get a piece of string, because remember, James Audubon, he wanted to see if birds returned to their nest after winter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a string. It can be any colored string that you would like. I'm going to cut it to about right here. And I can always trim it if I need to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first tie a knot right in the middle. Now this is a little bit tricky. I know your mom or dad would be happy to help you. But then I'm going to make a little bow. So that way I can glue it onto my bird's foot. Now you can choose any bird that you want. Maybe you want to put it on both of your bird's feet. But I'm just going to stick with this one right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get some glue. And I'm just going to glue a big chunk of that glue on the back of my bow. And I'm going to place it right on my bird's foot. So that way I know that if that bird decides to come back for spring, I will know that is the bird that I tied the knot on. But yeah, that was our last step for our picture. If there's anything else that you would like to add, maybe you want to go back and touch up on that sky a little bit to make sure it's a nice even color, you can go ahead and do so. But while your picture does dry, make sure that you clean up your area and also clean your hands. You may have gotten a lot of paint on your table or on yourself, so make sure to take that moment to tidy up your area. I'm going to go ahead and clean my hands. Got a lot of oil pastel and watercolor underneath those nails. Clean your nails, clean your fingers, check your elbows, and clean that table as well. Make sure to just leave it on the table for it to dry though, because you don't want to move it around. It might be a little bit wet. One last time, make sure to check that you don't have any puddles on your picture as well. But that is it for our picture inspired by Audubon. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had so much fun learning about John James Audubon and how he was able to find out that birds came back in the spring by tying on some silver onto a bird's foot. Please post your pictures on our Fibo Village page. We would love to see them, and we will see you next time. Bye.